Good morning. The Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation and Housing is now called to order. Today is Friday, August 7th, and the time now is 9:10. I'd like to first, number one, apologize for we started late, and what we had to do was just set up the panel so we can get all four panelists to be able to speak one time, and then we could move this a lot more efficiently. Notice for this public hearings were disseminated via email to all senators and main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Friday, July 31st. Second notice was issued on Tuesday, August 4th. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 215-35 COR, authored by Senator Minority Leader Senator Taitagues, co-sponsored by Senator Luis B. Muñoz, Senator Kelly Mars, and Senator Will Castro. An act to amend Section 6301 of Article 3, Chapter 6, Division 1, Title 5, Guam Code annotated relative to maximum limits of governmental liability. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me. To my immediate left is the Minority Leader, Senator Taitagues, and to my immediate right is Senator Will Castro. The general rules for the public hearing. Those testifying on behalf of the bills will be recognized by myself, and I will recognize them right now, just to identify them up front. We have David Lubofsky. We have Robert Kia. If I murder your name, please tell me and I can correct it. John Bell and Shannon Titan. All right? Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopy. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But if you need more time, please just continue. Hopefully it's not a whole hour, but please feel free. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. We're talking about the bill. We try to focus on the bill. We may go a little bit outside of it, and there's not a problem with that one. We can work around this. Individuals, you all be allowed to present oral testimony. And once you're done, you are now being asked to remain in the room for additional questions or additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the committee. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title if you have any other than being a concerned citizen. We will now begin to discuss Bill 215-35. I will now begin with Mr. Dave. Oh, I apologize. I forgot. I will ask the author of the bill to please give her opening statement on her bill. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. And
David Lubofsky. Thank you, Senators, for allowing me to submit and give testimony today. First of all, I wanted to say I'm a ULG graduate of 1976, and I can tell you, cost of living is really different from today than it was back then. So in effect, I'm in support of Bill 215-35. The bill is easy to understand, support, and justify purely from an economical viewpoint. As much as I'm here to support it, I would also be amiss to say that I would have liked to see it have larger financial increases than is presented, based realistically on current costs of living, inflation, and values today, as compared to 37 years ago. Using the year 1983, 37 years ago, cost of living figures, according to the American Institute for Economic Research, cost of living calculator, $100,000 then equals $594,000 today, which is $58,000 more than what is requested today to align cost of living with this bill. Also, $300,000 37 years ago now equals $775,783. This is more than $275,000 of what is being requested today to align cost of living. The two requested increases from 100 to 200 and 300 to 500 based on cost of living are substantially lower than what things really cost in the inflation value today. The bill does not request enough, but the intent is to make things on par and at the same time stay frugal for taxpayers. I support that. This is one reason I think the amount should be higher, but the bill aims at realistically increasing damage awards while being financially frugal at the same time. I also support the bill, as it's my opinion that damages related to malpractice at the hospital, whether that be resulting in death or injury, needs to be taken seriously. And maybe, just maybe, higher damage amounts may deter medical negligence. It's often said that higher tort damages can deter tort conduct. A person will be less willing to engage in intentional tort conduct if he knows he will have to pay for the harm. Therefore, to the extent that a defendant can engage in tort conduct and not be held fully accountable financially, the maximum deterrent effect of the law is not being realized. It's my belief that the higher levels of damage compensation required by this bill and eventual law will help to deter tort behavior and help to make people within the government and at GMH more accountable and at the same time more fairly compensate victims, even though not to the extent that cost of living changes would have equated. It is also my opinion that this bill will be a step in the right direction to make government workers, and again, most importantly, medical staff at GMH accountable and responsible with higher tort penalties. Accountability leads to less apathy. It's a basic psychological tenet when doing one's job, which is, in my opinion, is part of the problem at GMH. A lack of accountability leading to apathy negatively impacts medical care. I would also like to point out that, in my opinion, as stated, the proposed amounts, while a good start, will not make a person whole again when you figure in legal fees, continued medical care for an injury, and a host of other expenses that an injured person may face and have to pay for, including off-island travel. I support this law, being the realist that I am, and from my own experience, I also know that it may take forever to get back to this table with anything better than this that would better compensate Guam citizens. So this bill is a great start. And I emphasize start. And to finish, I would like to add my personal thoughts to this bill, or any similar bills. I do not think, personally, that the people of Guam should pay for medical negligence at GMH, whether this bill allows, which this bill allows, or any of these bills allow, which is the case now and will be with this bill. If a GMH doctor makes a negligent mistake, that doctor should pay for that mistake, or at least in part through their own malpractice insurance, not the taxpayers, which perpetuates the apathy among our medical professionals, knowing that they or anyone else who works for the government are not responsible to those that they harm. In essence, as citizens, we are paying for our own injury. If somebody in the government injures us, we're really paying for it through our own tax dollars, relieving them of any responsibility. I support this bill and at the same time hope eventually for a full reform of the Government Claims Act to be more consumer realistic and accountable while protecting the taxpayers at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Mr. Robert Keel?
Keo, yes.
All right, I'm on track. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I've submitted written testimony, which I'm not.
All right,
Again, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Titan. I'd like to also recognize two other colleagues that have joined us, Senator Pedo Terlaje, and we also have Senator Kelly Marsh Titan. Thank you. I would like to start asking just a few questions and make a few comments. For Dave, for Mr. Lebowski, on your page 2, I agree with you totally on your last paragraph, but we need to figure out how we can make that work. And I'm going to read his statement so that everybody hears how I support it. On the second sentence, I don't think the people of Guam should pay for medical negligence at GMH. I agree with that. Taxpayers shouldn't be paying for somebody that, if you're negligent, you're accountable, you pay for it. That's why you got the profession, do your job, do it right. Hopefully, do the best you can. And then it goes on further, the doctors should pay for that mistake, or at least in part, through their own malpractice insurance, not the taxpayers, which perpetrates the apathy among our medical profession, knowing that they are, or anyone who works for the government, are not responsible to those that are harmed, and in essence, we as injured citizens are paying ourselves for our own taxes, with our own taxes for their medical negligence. I agree with that, Dave. I just wanted to make that statement clear. With Mr. Quiaz, I've listened to all your hearings and your testimonies. I noticed on the very bottom, you asked for a retro amendment. What are we looking at? You're looking at going back, what, 1 year, 2 years, or is there any specific period? Because we don't want to identify it by people. We want to identify it by time period, right? Maybe that's, I'm going to assume that's what you're after. Retro, if this bill was to pass, we're retroing it to what, January 2020, or are we looking at how far back?
It would be the date that the claim accrued and within the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations on a government claim, any negligence claim is 2 years. So if the claim has accrued within the past 2 years, and
expertise in presenting the issues regarding this particular bill. I agree with the bill, but at this point in time, I don't really support the bill. There's a lot of issues to this bill. The amount mentioned bothers me a lot because I would say that there's no amount of money that can replace the life of a person, and this is one of the things that when I was reading this bill. Another thing that I am concerned about, for example, is the medical professionals. You know, the amount of liabilities for the doctors. If, for example, unintentional. And there's going to be a lot of reluctancy on these medical professionals if we were going to hire them to work for the hospital. So we need to consider some kind of compromise with the insurance company to cover the doctor, because no doctor is going to say, I'm going to accept, paying $1 million or $300,000 for something that I didn't mean to do. And of course, we know that there's some medical treatment that occurs, and the doctor tried his very best to save that person, but however, our Creator is the will for the life of us. And it concerns me because what are we going to do if we don't have enough medical professionals that have the skill for certain medical problems that we have? If I am a doctor, and I face the liability for some even unintentional wrongdoing on my part as a doctor, and I try to do my best to save a person, I will not work for the hospital. So I asked Mr. Chairman if we can, I'm not recommending that we send this bill back to the committee, but I'm asking that all the senators and invite all the doctors and invite the administrator for the hospital, for example, to join us and dialogue and interact and come out with some of the issues that we need to satisfy this particular bill. That's my concern. And like I mentioned, the amount is way too low if we want to look at it. And like I mentioned in the beginning, there's no amount of money that can replace the life of a person. And I want to thank the author of the bill for coming out with this, because I like the bill, I like the intent of the bill, but I don't really support this kind of bill until we get everybody together, those professionals and the insurance companies, the senators, and even the governor, to come out and not compromise, but talk this thing over, because a lot of people does not agree with the amount, especially doctors. And not only the doctors at the hospital or doctors at a medical clinic, but also the government itself. Right now, we're facing a dilemma in our economy. And we're talking about making this amount, building the amount that is actually recommended. But I don't see the amount as reasonable. The amount is very low, and I appreciate with one of our guests here that the amount is way too low. So, Mr. Chair, I asked, because I'm not going to refer this bill back to the committee, but I think we should interact and discuss the issues that will come by if we pass this bill. I'm concerned about, the medical professionals, and I'm concerned about the government also. So we need to go back and talk about this, Mr. Chair, and maybe we can create some kind of compromise that is conclusive to the intent of this bill. Thank you very much.
I think what this law intends, or this bill intends to do, as has been said over and over again, but I want to repeat it, is to look at caps for what the hospital has to pay. As an example, referring to the doctors, the way it's set up, and Attorney Keogh has already said this, the doctors at the hospital don't pay anything. It's not really necessary to have them in the room because nothing comes out of their pockets. My advocacy is to change that, though, which would be a different bill where the doctors in the hospital would have to have malpractice, and rather than the citizens of Guam through taxpayer dollars paying for what happens at the hospital if it's malpractice, that the doctors are required to have their own malpractice, at least at a minimal amount, so when something happens, they become responsible for it. But this bill has nothing to do with that. This bill just basically sets the caps. If something happens, if a doctor kills you in the hospital and it's his fault, or he never shows up in the room and the child dies, you get $200,000. Big deal. So the doctor has nothing to do. The doctor just walks away. And that's sort of the way our system is set up right now. So in terms of bringing doctors in and getting permission from them and talking to administrators and all these other things, it's really not that complicated with this bill. Maybe another bill would be better and so forth. But the way things are right now, it's a simple bill. Raise it for $200,000. It's still under what the cost of living, but it would be helpful to in people who have sustained injuries, $200,000, $500,000. This is one of the most simple bills I've seen, actually. Thank you very much.
May I add one other comment, if I can?
Definitely.
On the idea, when I raised the concept of enforcement, there are plenty of provisions in the law, as it's not implicated by this statute at this time, but for example, if a government agency, like the hospital, or any other autonomous or line agency, were to get insurance on vehicles on the road, then that insurance would not be subjected to the cap. The insurance, if you got $1 million insurance policy on your public works trucks out there, then any person that was injured would not be limited by this cap. They could bring their claim against the insurance, but they don't. None of the government agencies have insurance. The hospital doesn't have insurance. It's provided in the law that if they do, that the limit is the insurance policy, but they don't do it. That's the enforcement issue, is that they're allowed to do it, but they don't do it.
So, Juice Mahasi, for all the additional information, as I said before, it's just, it's so important to hear all of these different aspects so that we give it as much consideration as possible, and then perhaps consider additional bills to continue to tackle these issues as well. So, Juice Mahasi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I would have Senator Taitagues, the author of the bill, to please close, and so we can wrap this one up. Thank you.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to thank you for holding this public hearing and not having to wait another 40 years before we adjust these inflated issues that we come across when bills are so old that have not been addressed. I appreciate everyone. Shannon, thank you so much, for the Attorney General having representation here, Attorney Bell, Attorney Keogh, and David Lebowski. I greatly appreciate you being here. Your efforts will help steer this bill into the session floor and pass, and you will be contributed to that end result. And to my colleagues who are here to testify, or not testify, to ask questions, to my colleague Senator Pedo Terlaje, if he feels this is too low of a cap, then I hope he makes an amendment on the session floor to have no limits, no caps on it, if he feels that strongly about it. But the point is,
the way
if
to
we
do
can
it.
if we're able to sue companies out there that provide service, to no limit, and sue them. The government of Guam provides the same kind of services out there, and if we can't, help individuals who've been wrongfully negligent to a point they were wronged by any kind of fault of the government of Guam, they should be compensated, and justly compensated. But we need to do something first here, and that is to look at the inflated cost, the rising cost from 40 years today, and just make that whole at this point, and hopefully incorporate certain amendments in there that the oversight chair, who mentioned about the attorney's fees, as well as the retroactive application. That's going to be important. We're going to look into that and probably incorporate that. But again, I appreciate it, and I'm sure all those the people of Guam also appreciate you being here, the four of you. Sijus Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello. And I thank my colleagues for all their questions and the panel for joining us today and your testimony. The committee will conclude this public hearing on Bill 215-35 COR. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation, Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. @gmail.com. Sijus Masi for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. Please enjoy your day and have a safe weekend. Take care.